Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 episode number 102 based on novel. So let's start. After Wang Chua had returned, Shrek Academy started to conduct special training for this bunch. Since they had no teacher, Wang Chua had become their demonic training instructor over the first few days. Her method was simple and violent. They fought one-on-one sparring, and then team matches. At the start, many of them were unwilling to listen to her. However, after Wang Chua was able to defeat the entire team by herself, they were all convinced. In 2 months, under Wang Chua's leadership, everyone's combat ability increased exponentially. In particular, their will to fight had been greatly strengthened. Among them, Dai Huabin and Wu Feng showed the greatest increase. The two of them had a single-minded obsession with Hua Yuhao, and hence, Wang Chua continually used Hua Yuhao to stimulate them. She even told them that Hua Yuhao was paralyzed because of his accident, but even so, he only needed one hand, and just one hand, to thrash them. Wu Feng and Dai Huabin were naturally provoked by this statement. They did not believe it. Then, they were defeated by Wang Chua, who stood still and used only one hand. From that moment, the two of them started to train like crazy. They seemed to experience no fatigue. Under such torturous training, their cultivation improved tremendously, and they showed improvements in every aspect. It was almost time to leave. While they knew that in the face of Shrek's 7 monsters, their hopes of victory were still slim, they had undergone 2 months of hellish training under Wang Chua. This made them much more resilient and determined to fight. After she defeated Dai Huabin once more, Wang Chua put away her golden dragon spear and said in a low voice, "That's all for today. Go back and rest, we'll set off tomorrow." When she said that, everyone could not help but sigh in relief. Dai Huabin, who lay on the ground, was gulping in big breaths of air. His body ached all over. However, he still felt a sense of accomplishment. He forced himself off the ground and looked at Wang Chua's disappearing form. An intensely hot light flashed in his eyes. "Elder sister, wait," Ju Siken said as he ran after Wang Chua. Wang Chua stopped, turned her head and looked at him and said, "What?" Ju Siken giggled, "Elder sister, are we leaving with our class monitor's team?" Wang Chua's face turned cold, and she said, "Do you want to leave with them?" Ju Siken coughed. His perceptive abilities were strong. He instantly felt that there was something amiss about Wang Chua's emotions, and he hurriedly said, No, I'm just asking casually. I heard that Hua Yuhao has been severely injured. We want to visit him, but the Sea God's Pavilion is off limits to us." Wang Chua snorted coldly, "He is he, and we are we. We'll go by ourselves." After she said that, she turned to leave without turning her head. When he looked at Wang Chua's disappearing form, Ju Siken could not help but feel slightly depressed. In the past few days, whenever they mentioned anything about Hua Yuhao, Wang Chua would become extremely temperamental. No one knew why, or what the relationship between their class monitor and her was. After 2 months of hell, they both feared and respected Wang Chua. With her powerful skills and abilities, she had completely dominated them. However, this elder sister of theirs was too ferocious. Every day, they had to undergo countless torturous training sessions under her. Wang Chua did not show mercy at all. Once, her golden dragon spear had pierced through Dai Huabin's thigh. Fortunately, he received timely medical treatment, which prevented it from worsening. Of course, they did not know that Wang Chua did not use the terrifying life absorption skill of the golden dragon spear. If not, that blow would have almost killed him. They were about to leave. Ju Sichen's eyes slowly betrayed a fanatical gaze. They were competing on behalf of Shrek Academy. Even though their prospects were dim and they were facing extremely powerful opponents, he thought of the previous tournament, and how Hua Yuhao, Bei Bei, and the rest were able to emerge as champions despite only being 3-ringed and 4-ringed soulmasters back then. His heart brimmed with confidence. Miracles are made by men. If my class monitor can do that in the previous tournament, why can't we do the same here? Pa. Someone tapped his shoulder, jolting Ju Siken from his reverie. He turned his head to see Cao Jinxian looking at him with a half-smile. "What are you looking at?" Ju Siken said in an unpleasant tone. Cao Jinxian sniggered, "I'm looking at someone who's dreaming. Be more realistic. Try and make your way to the main team before thinking of anything else. What's the point in having unrealistic dreams? Confidence is built on the foundation of actual abilities. Why is this a dream?" Ju Siken refused to admit it. Cao Jinxuan's voice changed. All of a sudden, he sounded very similar to Ju Siken. "Champion, I must be the champion. Waha, what a beautiful thing it is. Beauties, haha, come to me. My embrace is wide indeed." Ju Sichen's eyes widened as he stammered, "What are you saying?" Cao Jinxian slapped his shoulder lightly and said, "I'm learning from someone's sleep talk. I'll leave first." With that, he turned to leave calmly. Ha ha ha, an uncontrollable laughter sounded from the back. Zhu Siken turned his head to look and realized that everyone, except Dai Huabin and Wu Feng, who had already left, were looking at him. Their faces were all mirthful. Lan Susu and Lan Luoluo could not control their laughter. Cao Jinxian, I'm going to beat you up, Zhu Siken shouted in fury. He turned and wanted to run after him. However, when he turned back, Cao Jinxian had already disappeared. Dawn, Shrek City, the Tang sect. Shrek's 7 monsters, all of whom were clad lightly, and Nana, Ji Juechen, and Jing Xian left through the main door. Xian Ziwen, who was in charge of looking after the sect in their absence, did not accompany them. He was still busy with the secret factory. Under this rather unceremonious atmosphere, the entire group headed toward the west gate of Shrek Academy. Ads by Pub Future. Hua Yuhao sat in the wheelchair made from the golden tree. The wheelchair was extremely simplistic, but Elder Xian's craftsmanship was decent. It was simple, but efficient. There was a special cushion near the waist, and the entire wheelchair was made from a few pieces of wood glued together. It was extremely smooth, and one would not get tired of sitting in it. One should not underestimate the materials used. The golden tree in Shrek Academy was one of the last golden trees on the entire continent. While it was not the only one left, it was the biggest. 1,000 years ago, the school ruled that no one was allowed to cut the tree down. It was the center and treasure of the academy. The materials that were used to make Hua Yuhao's wheelchair came from branches of the golden tree that fell off naturally, as well as some raw materials from the sea god's pavilion. Its value could not be understated. The golden tree brimmed with pure and warm light-type energy. Within the smooth glow of the wheelchair, Hua Yuhao's legs and arm, which he had used to store the ultimate ice origin power, would not be damaged as easily. Furthermore, under the nourishing glow of light, his body would recover faster. This was beneficial to his absorption of the origin energy. At this moment, Ji Juechen was the one pushing the wheelchair. While Wang Donga would normally be the one doing it, Ji Juechen was very stubborn. That day, he had promised to push Hua Yuhao's wheelchair for him. This morning, he had waited unwaveringly for him at the gate. Wang Donga had no choice but to let him do so. She cared for him from the side. As she looked at Hua Yuhao, who was seated calmly on the wheelchair with his arm and legs immobile, Jing Xian could not help but ask, Yuhao, look at your state, why are you so insistent on taking part in the competition? Hua Yuhao chuckled and said, I still have some energy to spare. Hee hee. Jing Xian sighed and said, I miss the days when we sparred. Hua Yuhao looked bewildered as he replied, I never imagined that Sister Xian was a masochist. You like being beaten by me? You, Jing Xian said in anger, you heartless bastard, I'm showing you care and concern right now. How dare you make fun of me? Donga, keep him in check. Wang Donga smiled slightly and said, he's already in this state, what else can I do? Sister Xian, he's mentally well, please don't worry so much. Jing Xian looked in surprise at this smart lass as she nodded and said, actually, I was just thinking of when we could fight again. Hua Yuhao sighed and replied, actually, even with one hand, I can still give you the thrill of being tortured. Jing Xian snorted, I shan't talk with a cripple anymore. With that, she walked away, leaving a stunned-looking Hua Yuhao behind. A huge hand pressed down on Hua Yuhao's shoulder, and a low voice sounded, get well soon, I'm waiting for you. Hua Yuhao did not turn his head around. However, he could feel a rare tinge of emotion in Ji's voice, which was usually reserved for his sword. A bitter smile emerged on his face as he said, Brother Ji, don't you think Donga should be the one saying that to me? Wang Donga laughed. Ji Juechen's face froze over. The muscles in his face twitched. Then, he continued pushing the wheelchair silently. In fact, when everyone saw Hua Yuhao on the wheelchair, they all felt waves of intense emotion. Xiao Xiao and Jiang Nannan could not but exclaim out loud. In the past, Hua Yuhao was youthful and dashing. With what he had learned, he continually created miracle after miracle. He was named as the most powerful genius Shrek Academy had seen in 1,000 years. However, right now, he was only a cripple with just one movable right arm. However, Hua Yuhao's gaze was still resolute. No one prevented him from taking part in this tournament. Even his elder brother, Bei Bei, did not try to convince him otherwise. Over the past few days, Hua Yuhao's emotions had been steady, and he seemed much happier than before. Now, he tried to poke fun at others to make the group laugh. He appeared much more relaxed. Everyone knew that this was his way of letting everyone around him feel better. How could he not be upset that he had been reduced from an able-bodied person to a cripple? However, he never once showed it. Sitting in the golden wheelchair, he was still full of hope. Wang Donga gently touched Hua Yuhao's right hand and asked in a low voice, do you want some water? Hua Yuhao replied, didn't we drink some before we left? Donga, I'm fine, really. When will you guys believe that I'm still capable in spite of my disability? Jing Xian, who was ahead of him, turned around. Her face showed contempt as she said, a cripple is a cripple. How can you be capable? Other than spiritual detection, what else can you do? Hua Yuhao sighed and said, actually, I can do many things. Do you know what it means to turn misfortune into fortune? Jing Xian wanted to rebut him immediately. However, her words stopped at the tip of her tongue. Her eyes widened, and she stared at shock at what was happening in front of her. Hu Yuhao, Wang Dong'er, and Ji Juechen, all of whom were walking behind her, suddenly disappeared in a flash of light. They appeared to have vanished completely. Ah! What's going on? Where's Hu Yuhao and the rest? Jing Xian exclaimed in surprise. This caught the attention of the rest. Everyone turned their heads. The three of them were indeed gone. At this moment, the air distorted, and Hu Yuhao and the three of them appeared once again. They were walking forward normally. It was as if Jing Xian had been momentarily blinded. What trick is this? I don't recall you having any soul skill that allows you to camouflage others, Jing Xian exclaimed in shock. Concealing oneself was no big deal. Many soul masters had similar soul skills. However, for Hu Yuhao to conceal two other people along with him, that was rather unbelievable. Group concealment was a powerful soul skill that no one had ever heard of. Hu Yuhao looked into the sky, sighed, and said, "This is called skill." Jing Xian looked at him coolly and said, "Hu Yuhao, stop acting big. We're still friends." Ku. Hu Yuhao appeared to have choked on his spittle as he coughed non-stop. Wang Dong'er rushed up to him and patted his chest. Hu Yuhao said, "It's fine, we're still in the city. Once we leave the city, I'll show everyone what else can I do. If not, you'll just treat me as a cripple. I want to contribute to this tournament." Bei Bei looked at Hu Yuhao and said, "Little brother, don't force it." Hu Yuhao said seriously, "Elder brother, I'm not forcing it. Even with just one arm left, I'm definitely still better than those who can just turn themselves into smoke and fog." What crap. Normally, Jing Xian would have charged up at him. However, what could she do now that Hu Yuhao was in this state? Hu Yuhao said confidently, "Let's see once we leave the city." By doing so, not only was he trying to improve the atmosphere and not let everyone get distracted by the fact that he was crippled, he was also reminding himself that he had to show off some of his skills. If not, what if everyone really treated him like a cripple? He really wanted to compete in the tournament. They did not move too quickly, taking an hour to leave Shrek City. They walked out of the west gate and continued headed west, toward the Sun Moon Empire. It was fastest for them to use a flying-type soul tool. Yesterday, they had planned it all out. Bei Bei, Shu Sanxia, He Kai Tu, and Wang Dong'er would fly ahead with Hu Yuhao first. Among them, Wang Dong'er was responsible for helping Hu Yuhao block the incoming wind. The rest of them would rely on their flying-type soul tools. Furthermore, Shen Ziwen had made a large flying-type soul tool that could carry many people at once, made to Hu Yuhao's specifications. "All right, we've left the city. Sister Xian, let's spar, let's spar." Ji Juechen, who was pushing his wheelchair from behind, froze. "Yuhao, are you serious?" While Jing Xian was weaker than Bei Bei, Shu Sanxia, and the rest, she was still a soul emperor in her own right. Her martial soul might not be terribly powerful, but when combined with her soul tools, her battling abilities could not be underestimated. If Hu Yuhao was uninjured, there was a chance that he could still beat her. However, in his current state, movement was difficult, so how could he fight her? Hu Yuhao nodded and he looked at Jing Xian and said, "Of course I'm serious." "Sister Xian, are you scared?" Jing Xian said unkindly, "Scared of you? How can I be scared of you in this state? I don't want to bully a cripple." Hu Yuhao said angrily, "A temporary cripple, not a cripple. Come, hurry up, don't waste everyone's time. Has anyone placed bets?" "I'll be the bookie." Shu Sanxia rushed forward excitedly, almost bouncing. Jiang Nannan followed next to him. When she heard what he said, she pinched his waist hard. "You're heartless indeed. Yuhao is in this state, and all you can do is stir up even more trouble. Yuhao, stop fooling around. We'll set off now. We all know you're capable." Hu Yuhao smiled bitterly and said, "Fourth sister, from your words, I know that you don't expect much from me. Look, I think third brother understands me better." In fact, since his recuperation had begun, he had not cultivated with his teammates. All he had been doing was recovering by himself at home. Coupled with the fact that only one of his 4 limbs could move, it was normal for his teammates to doubt his abilities. This was why he was set on challenging Jing Xian. If my teammates don't trust me, then, what if something goes wrong during the competition? Even Bei Bei won't let me compete. Jing Xian said unpleasantly, "You're not joking. Dong'er, take good care of him." She completely ignored Hu Yuhao's provocation and turned to leave. Hu Yuhao sighed helplessly. Following that, he narrowed his eyes, and a ray of purple light flashed from his pupils. Just as Jing Xian was about to leave, she suddenly realized that the people around her were gone. She felt an immense pressure in her heart as she discovered, to her shock, that her surroundings had turned white. Nothing could be seen, and it resembled the end of the world. She was alone. "What's going on? Juechen, Bei Bei, where are you?" Jing Xian called out. At the same time, she released her martial soul. A layer of fog started to spread from her body, and all 6 of her soul rings rose. A pair of short knives appeared in her hands. What's going on, Xian? An extremely familiar shape appeared. It was Ji Juechen. When she saw Ji Juechen, she sighed visibly and said, "What's going on? Why can't I see anyone else?" Ji Juechen looked at her in confusion and said, "I don't know either. I heard your shouts and came over." "You're right. Where is everybody?" Jing Xian naturally lowered her guard around him. She looked around her suspiciously. At this moment, an ice-cold sensation appeared at her neck, and a cruel, killing intent manifested itself. Jing Xian's body froze as she stood immobile. She could clearly sense the blade that was pressed against her neck. If she moved, she would die. At this moment, the blurry scene around her disappeared. They returned to the west gate of Shrek City. Everyone was not far from where she stood. However, they all looked at her in shock. The ice-cold feeling disappeared, and a tone of jest sounded, it's so simple. No wonder you don't want to fight with me. This is why you can't match me." Jing Xian turned around to look. She realized that the person next to her was not Ji Juechen, but Hu Yuhao instead. He slowly retracted a dark golden blade that had emerged from his finger. The blade was 6 meters long. Under the bright sunlight, it was exceptionally terrifying. How did you do that?" Jing Xian asked in shock. Hu Yuhao looked into the sky and said, "I can't reveal this secret. No. Jing Xian said angrily, "Rubbish, I was ambushed by you. If you have the guts, let's have a one-on-one fight." Hu Yuhao's reply shocked her. "Okay." As he said that, he lifted his right hand at Jing Xian once more. This time, Jing Xian did not dare to be careless. She leapt back, and as she did so, her entire body turned into a ball of smoke in midair, which slowly started to expand. Everyone else who had thought that Hu Yuhao was just joking now looked at him solemnly with varying expressions in their eyes. With only one arm, how could he beat Jing Xian? The moment the fight started, Jing Xian had disappeared into smoke. However, everyone else could clearly see that Jing Xian's eyes suddenly clouded over, and she released her martial soul while surveying the area around her cautiously. Then, Hu Yuhao made Ji Juechen let go as he turned his wheelchair in her direction. He released his dark golden terror claw and gently placed it on Jing Xian's neck. Throughout the entire process, Jing Xian did not even react. What did this mean? This meant that she was completely under Hu Yuhao's spell. This was a terrifying and mystical sight, which many refused to believe. However, it had taken place before their eyes. Jing Xian might be confused by the whole thing, but even the other 6 of the 7 monsters who understood Hu Yuhao, including Wang Donga, did not know how he won. Right now, as he faced Jing Xian in her smoke form, Hu Yuhao's face turned serious. He then turned his head. While facing off against her, he turned his gaze toward Wang Donga. Wang Donga asked slightly worriedly, "Yuhao?" At this moment, she realized that Hu Yuhao's gaze had turned warmer. His eyes brimmed with adoration and a warm love. In his eyes, Wang Donga could see her own figure. Just by noticing this, Wang Donga could clearly sense that her heart was slowly connecting with that of Hu Yuhao. An unspeakably deep bond encircled the two of them. Why was Hu Yuhao looking at Wang Donga? Everyone was thinking the same thing in their minds. Then, the answer revealed itself. The wheelchair under Hu Yuhao started to shine, and a dazzling golden light flashed. Thick light-type energy started to permeate his surroundings. Following that, a golden figure started to appear behind him. Hu Yuhao was bathed in a golden light. Wasn't the figure behind him Wang Donga? Here, he formed a Wang Donga purely from his spiritual power. Her facial expression and the look in her eyes resembled Wang Donga perfectly. Then, Hu Yuhao gently reached out with his palm, and the projection of Wang Donga behind him did the same. The two figures instantly merged into one. A terrifying intention was sent flying to the front. The purple clouds which had spread apart slowly came together. It was as if someone was throttling them. Then, they vanished, and Jing Xian appeared before everyone with a pale face. Hu Yuhao's hand remained in midair, but he did not continue reaching out. An intense golden light started to form in the center of his palm. "Do you still want to continue?" Hu Yuhao asked softly. Jing Xian's forehead was laced with sweat. The short knives in her hands were trembling. She could not find the guts to fight Hu Yuhao. This was the first time she had experienced something like this. It was similar to facing Ji Juechen's sword intent. However, while Juechen's sword intent was in a continual process of betterment, which showed that there were still flaws, the intent that Hu Yuhao released appeared perfect to her. This intention was used completely on her. At this moment, Jing Xian felt as if 10,000 tsunami waves were hurtling toward her. Her soul rings lost their functionality in that moment, and she felt her heart being squeezed by a huge hand. This moment of tightness caused her to abandon her soul skill. Before Hu Yuhao, as she looked at his palm, she only felt immense fear. What power is this? Why does it exert such a powerful suppression? Furthermore, he had yet to release the energy stored in his hand. What if he did? In terms of spiritual power, this palm seemed capable of shocking heaven and earth, provoking spirits and God. Jing Xian had never expected Hu Yuhao, who had lost use 3 of his 4 limbs, to still be so strong. This palm shocked everyone else present, including Ji Juechen. Ji Juechen looked blankly at Hu Yuhao. This intent, this ultimate intent, it's what I'm after. As he said that, he rushed toward Hu Yuhao. When he was in front of him, he grabbed Hu Yuhao's shoulders tightly and said, "Yuhao, how did you accomplish this? Such a perfect intent, how did you do it?" Hu Yuhao smiled slightly as he looked at Wang Donga, who was in the distance, and said, "Extreme love forms ultimate intentions. When I was on the verge of death, my heart was filled with Wang Donga, and I realized that this was a thought that I possessed completely by myself. Unlike the sovereign's descent, this is something that belongs to me and me only. Actually, this palm is not as powerful as you think. Its strength lies in my thoughts, which have increased and become stronger. Its existence has almost elevated from the concrete immaterial realm to the concrete material realm. However, as my cultivation is too low, I must wait until I'm a 7-ringed soul sage before my spiritual power can match this thought. As it comes from love, it manifests into an ultimate intent, the extremity of love. The extremity of your love is stronger than my dedication to my sword intent. Indeed, I never expected that you'd reach what I've been after quicker than me." Ji Juechen's eyes brimmed with an intense passion. There was no envy, simply passion and appreciation. Wang Donga now looked at Hu Yuhao more gently. Everyone could see how crazy Ji Juechen was over his sword intent. However, his passion for his sword could not compare to Hu Yuhao's love for her. That simple line was enough to encapsulate the ocean-like love Hu Yuhao had for Wang Donga. Hu Yuhao did not say that when Wang Donga was present, his goddess of light's power would increase by 30%. After all, this required no thought, only a blissful sentiment. Only then could the power of goddess of light reach its maximum. If not, wanting to use an illusory spiritual thought to break Jing Xian's soul emperor-level soul skill would be impossible. Everyone started to crowd around next to Hu Yuhao. Bei Bei said nothing, he just smiled and gave Hu Yuhao a thumbs up. He Kaitu sighed in admiration. "Little brother, you are our secret weapon indeed." Shu Sancha said pensively, "Your spiritual power has increased exponentially. Not bad, not bad. He, your invisibility ability is derived from your second soul skill, right?" Hu Yuhao laughed, but said nothing. Jiang Nannan asked curiously, "What's its radius?" Hu Yuhao thought for a while and replied, "The bigger the radius, the faster my spiritual power will deplete. I can maintain a 50-meter radius for about 10 minutes. For every half-meter radius less, I can maintain it for 1 more minute." Xiao Xiao said in shock, "Doesn't this mean that when our opponents fight us, they won't be able to see us at all?" Hu Yuhao chortled and replied, "It's not that strong, but it can affect their judgment." Jing Xian then asked, "Just now, what ability did you use to blind me?" Hu Yuhao scratched his head and said, "Let me keep some secrets to myself. Like this, when we face our enemies, we can surprise them." Bei Bei smiled and said, "Yes, everyone, stop asking. Prepare to depart. Yuhao, you have given us all a big surprise." Hu Yuhao chortled and said, "Elder brother, if I were useless, why would I still want to compete? I don't wish to be a burden." The origin energy of heaven and earth in his body greatly restricted his freedom of movement. It also restricted his second martial soul, the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion. After all, he could not even move. The Ice Jade Empress Scorpion skills were meant for close combat. Naturally, in his state, it was greatly weakened. Furthermore, he still needed to use a portion of her soul power to absorb the origin energy of heaven and earth. Hence, the only skill he could rely on was his spiritual eyes. As a control-type soul master, Hu Yuhao's spiritual eyes had undergone a fundamental change compared to before he had left for the setting sun forest. While his soul power was only about 80% of what it had been, his actual fighting abilities were much stronger. His powerful spiritual eyes could let him do many things that he previously could not. For example, his ability to control Jing Xian's senses was an evolved form of spiritual interference. His spiritual interference had now almost become a domain. With his spiritual eyes martial soul, Hu Yuhao could easily surpass other soul masters of the same level. Furthermore, he still had the power of his soul bone, and he could still use a bit of Ice Empress powers. The flying-type soul tool was activated. Hu Yuhao's seat was attached to the soul tool. He released a Class 6 protective soul barrier to prevent his body from being buffeted by the wind. Wang Donga was seated next to him, and she carried a flying-type soul tool on her back too. If something went wrong, she could respond instantly. Everyone took to the skies simultaneously. Their destination was Radiant City. The theme of the new Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament was Return. This was because a long time ago, This historic tournament only allowed sects to take part. In the past millennia, its scale had decreased, to the point where it only allowed schools to take part. This time, the Sun Moon Empire, the tournament's organizer, suggested the change, and the other countries agreed to it, deciding to restore the original criteria for the tournament. They increased the number of participating sects and changed the rules of the tournament. Doing so massively increased the scale of the competition. In the continent, there were considerably more sects than schools. For the schools, by doing well in the tournament, they could make a good name for themselves and recruit more students. This was also good for their future development. The same logic applied to the sects. The development of any sect required talents. The more talented an individual was, the more likely it was that they would join a top-notch sect. After the tournament's rules changed, almost 2/3 of the sects on the continent chose to take part. If the tournament committee hadn't restricted the age of the competitors to below 20 and demanded that at least 5 members of each sect had to have at least 4 rings, there would have been 10 times more teams competing in this tournament than last time. Even with such restrictions, there were still a total of 117 teams, many more than last time. As the wealthiest empire on the Doluor continent, hosting this tournament was nothing for the Sun Moon Empire. Even so, they took 3 months to prepare for it. As the biggest city on the continent, Radiant City constructed several hotels and guest houses to receive guests coming for this grand event. They benefited greatly from businessmen coming from foreign lands. The Sun Moon Empire also invested a lot in this tournament, since they were the top soul engineering empire on the continent. The top prize wasn't just soul bones anymore, they were soul tools. The winning team could obtain a Class 9 soul tool, while the runner-up and third-place teams would receive Class 8 and Class 7 soul tools respectively. The values of these soul tools were much higher than soul bones. This was especially true for the champions. Currently, a Class 9 soul tool was priceless, and only the Sun Moon Empire possessed Class 9 soul tools. At the same time, Class 9 soul tools were also the biggest threat to the other 2 empires on the continent. Every competing team was itching to obtain the prizes and working hard to perform better in the tournament. This wasn't just an opportunity for them to gain fame, it was an opportunity for them to profit greatly. Modern soul masters had to rely on soul tools in addition to their own cultivation if they wanted to gain greater abilities. However, the astronomical costs of advanced soul tools limited most soul masters. It was impossible to become the best without money. Radiant City, Sun Moon Empire's imperial palace, a backyard garden. A wheelchair was moving slowly on the quartzite path in the garden. There were different types of plants planted here. Every region of the garden was perfectly designed. There was a small waterfall atop a sculpted hill, an imperial painting of a bouquet of flowers, and huge, tall trees. The entire backyard garden felt like a beautiful forest. "How's my father?" Shu Tianran's eyes were shut. There was a blanket on his thighs, and he appeared very relaxed. Juzi was the one pushing his wheelchair. Juzi was clad in a long, yellow dress today, which accentuated her delicate white skin. She looked classy and elegant. She exuded a much more mature aura than before. A wise look flashed across her eyes. "I'm afraid he's nearing his end. The imperial physician said that he often passes out and loses consciousness these days," Juzi said softly. Shu Tianran continued to close his eyes. It was as if he was unrelated to the ailing old man that Juzi was talking about. "My father has always been very cautious and conscientious. He does not aim to acquire merit, but only hopes to avoid mistakes. He has missed out on great opportunities. When we look back in the future, he will only be regarded as an ordinary emperor." "What's the reaction of the military?" Juzi said. "They are very calm. Ever since we took control of the garrison, opposition from the military has disappeared. At least 2/5 of the empire's military is directly under our control now. Out of the other 3/5 of the military, around 2/3 of them are still monitoring the situation, or are loyal only to the emperor. Once you succeed the throne, I believe they will join your side. As for the last 1/5, they are military officers at the borders. Some of them have been brought over by other princes, while some were your enemies in the past." Shu Tianran gave a half smile. His smile was very nice, but for some reason, Juzi felt very cold in her heart when she saw this smile. That was because she was clear that Shu Tianran was ready to kill when he revealed such an expression. Shu Tianran smiled as he said, "No rush. When I succeed the throne, you can make a trip if they are still unwilling to budge." Juzi shuddered a little, but still nodded and said, "Okay." Shu Tianran turned around and looked at her. He said, "Juzi, you don't have to be so reserved around me. When I succeed the throne, the first thing I'll do is make you my queen. You are always so reserved. You lack the grace of a queen." Juzi revealed a slight smile on her face and replied, "Your Highness, I'm not with you because I covet fame or status. I only have 2 wishes. First, I just want to be with you. Second, I want to destroy the Star Luo Empire." Shu Tianran nodded and said, "Your 2 wishes will come true. Your performance in the military was better than I had expected. Even the hard-headed old generals are impressed by you. If this continues, you'll be my commanding general when we start our war against the Star Luo Empire. Thank you, Your Highness. Juzi knelt down beside Shu Tianran's wheelchair. Shu Tianran used his hand to lift her up and said, I told you that we don't have to be so formal with each other. If you hadn't saved my life, I wouldn't be here now. I have many subordinates who are more capable than you. However, you are the only one that I feel at ease with. Juzi's eyes were filled with gratitude. Shu Tianran didn't realize that there was also a feeling of indifference behind them. Can I really do what I want in front of you? In the past, there was an official who you owed gratitude towards. However, he was killed in his house after he acted a little more freely than usual. I was the one who carried out the kill order for you. Juzi understood Shu Tianran's character very well. He was very ambitious. There was only one goal in his life, to rule the entire Doluor continent. Furthermore, he was intelligent, had great tolerance, and was quite vicious. Although he was disabled, he had all the qualities needed to succeed. However, he became colder and more merciless after he lost his legs and his manly ability. Even Juzi didn't dare to get close to him when he revealed his violent and hostile aura sometimes. He wasn't just an anti-hero, Juzi even believed he was a maniac at times. However, he was an extremely intelligent maniac, but she wanted revenge, and thus she needed the support of a maniac like him. However, she didn't want to follow in his footsteps. That was why she acted very cautiously in front of him, concealing her true feelings very well. Furthermore, there was another person in her heart along with her true feelings. This person was a youth who had once suffered grave injuries because of her. The preparations for the tournament should be done, right? Did Hallmaster Hong Chen report back? Shu Tianran continued asking. Juzi had become his most important intelligence officer. There was one thing that Shu Tianran didn't exaggerate, and that was his trust towards Juzi. Juzi nodded and said, we are already prepared and ready to go. Everything is progressing according to plan. Shu Tianran said, a fine fowl only perches on a fine tree. I hope that they are wiser. Otherwise, it'll really be a pity. Have Shrek Academy's team arrived? They are the current reigning champions. If the intelligence is right, it's the same bunch who became champions the other time competing this time. If this is the case, it's likely that they will become champions again. It's a pity that it'll be very difficult for me to use them. Juzi seemed to be jolted. She clearly remembered that Hu Yuhao was part of the team from Shrek. Shu Tianran said, it's better not to touch Shrek Academy for now. Let them leave. I shall give this face to Shrek. I'll see what kind of sparks will be created between Shrek Academy and our people. Oh yes, please invite Mr. Zhongli here. Tell him I have something important to discuss with him. Yes. Juzi stood up and hurried out. Shu Tianran shut his eyes again and once more wore the leisurely smile on his face. He seemed like he was napping. The quiet and peaceful comfort in the garden was mesmerizing. The group from the Tang sect landed about 100 kilometers from Radiant City. If they ventured any further forward, they would enter the borders of Radiant City. As the capital of the greatest soul engineering empire, they might become practice targets of the city's defense system if they dared to violate the airspace of the city. They didn't meet with any danger on their journey here, and had arrived after only half a day of travel. They started a fire for cooking. Although everyone missed Hu Yuhao's cooking, they couldn't let a disabled person cook for them. Jiang Nannan, Xiao Xiao, and Wang Donga took on the responsibility as cooks. As for Jing Xian, even though she was also a lady, besides wielding blades and spears, she didn't know anything about cooking. She could only act as an assistant to the three chefs. Jiang Nannan was the best at cooking among the three. Although Wang Donga had learned from Hu Yuhao for a few days, she didn't pick up much. Hu Yuhao had heard Shu Sancha mention that Jiang Nannan was from a poor family. She had thus matured young, and was good at carrying out household chores. It turned out to be true. They had prepared sufficiently before they set out for this tournament, bringing quite a lot of ingredients. With Hu Yuhao around, they weren't worried about the freshness of the ingredients, since he was the owner of ultimate ice soul power. Hu Yuhao was fed by Wang Donga. Of course, she fed him with a spoon, and not through her mouth. After all, there were many people around. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.